social justice work, whether you are fighting for transgender lives, whether you are fighting for Black lives, whether you are fighting for human life, it is all the work of God.
Using a person's deep faith suddenly against them is one of the greatest crimes that you can perpetrate against a person. To take the things, the God, the love, the fellowship, the community that they value most, and turn around and say, this God, this community hates you and rejects you at the core of your being. That is devastating. And that's why we see such profound levels of depression and suicide in the trans community, precisely because the faith community that they love has turned on them. And what I have to say to that is, it is simply not true.
Welcome to Drag Chapel. I am Chad, and welcome you into this space, and we are going to do a call to worship.
I know that it's so important to show the face of queer people of faith, because the face that we get in the media is anti-gay and anti-trans people. And that's what's the most closely associated with religion, and that is only a small part of the story of people of faith. We're a whole spectrum, and there are plenty of, for all of the unfriendly places, there are friendly places that queer people can find who have a spiritual life and want to nurture their spiritual life. If I can also provide an example to young people, that there's not only one narrative of religion and faith, that not all religion is hateful towards queer people, then that's an added bonus. But I think the main thing is about authenticity and integrity, and how that gives you the energy to go out and do the things in the world.
I grew up in small town Texas in a Southern Baptist church, and always was told I was going to be a preacher when I grew up, and I was like, nope, I want to be Prince. About 38 years old, I finally answered my call and came. There are little boys and little girls out there that were just like me, who didn't have a space that was affirming and inclusive, and there could be other pastors out there who believe that they are gay and so they can't be. And so I wanted to be a representation. I wanted to create a space for people to feel encouraged, to feel loved, and not have to sacrifice a relationship with the ultimate love just because of what someone thought.
I think there are queer youth that grow up in religious homes that also genuinely love God, and whose parents genuinely love God. And so I think there's this tension then in those homes of, am I going to go to hell? Do I have to give up God? Do I have to give up the church to come out at all? And there's this deep self-loathing and hatred that happens. I think it's important that these parents and these children, somewhere out there, they know that a trans and queer person went through the same ordination processes that their pastor went through, and they're out and they're doing theology and Christianity and religion differently.
There will be many times in your leadership when you will need to choose. Do I do the easy thing, the quick fix, the popular thing with this group? Or do I choose to do the harder thing, that is actually the right thing for the common good and for the future?
Black queers have always been an integral part of the community that has abandoned us. In fact, we have been so vital and critical to the flourishing and the creative impulse of the Black church, of Black churches, of the culture, the music, the dancing, that it truly belongs to us. And we get to reframe those things we have been refused and to recontextualize them within the abundance and the expansiveness of what it means and what it is to live and to practice a Black radical queer life.
But through love become slaves to one another. For the whole law is summed up by a single commandment: you shall love your neighbor as yourself.
And I think that after a year in isolation and the pandemic, people are really looking for connection. And that requires going back and getting those who were left out. Not just those who were elderly or sick, but those who in our community, the LGBTQ plus community, the elderly, and the BIPOC, who we've excluded from situations. That diversity, that wealth of thought and experience is needed today especially. And as we go forth in creating this more just world, this post-George Floyd world where we can make democracy be what it will be.
I interview openly trans and queer ordained pastors in any kind of Christian tradition, but also faith leaders in other traditions. So on the dock, I have a rabbi, we have a couple of Buddhist Zen masters as well on the list. So that's kind of the idea of it.
So these faith leaders are gonna hopefully help us create the kind of world we want, right? So we got a lot of issues facing the country. Full and complete participation of the queer community, dealing with issues of ongoing anti-Black racism. And when you think about trans women of color, particularly Black trans women, it's a huge challenge. We at Union want to train and educate people who will engage all of those issues from a perspective of faith, so that the efforts to address these don't turn into struggles of hate,